Does anyone want these as notes before I clear them? Okay. Another example of this. So let me actually, I'll just minimize it for now and make a new directory because I don't want to delete all that. Great. So let's look at a couple other form types and how they show up on the DOM. Fortunately, now that we've learned the name attribute for forms, that's going to work for every other input we use as well. The same way that the text ones do. We can just say the form name dot the input name to grab values. But what is there any other types of inputs you can think of off the top of your head? So we take text from users, but what else can we get from users? Numbers. All right, let's look at a number type input. And that's all we got to do is just change the type of the input from text to number. And just know that text is the default. It'll always be a text input until you say otherwise. But all these inputs are little mini web components. They have pre-built functionality. So notice just by saying type number, I now get this little step counter I can use. And in fact, it won't even let me type characters unless they're mathematical characters like E. Once you get a new input type, you can start formatting it differently. There are settings for all of these that are different. So we can set, for example, a min and a max on number inputs. So now I'm in here. I click up, it starts at 5. If I hold it up, it stops at 20. I give it a min-max range. You can also say, step by a certain amount. So step by 2. Now it's going to go up by 2s. So each of these inputs have their own attributes you can use to kind of specialize it. When you're like, oh, I need to know how to use a number input, W3 school, number input attributes, you'll see all of this. W3, number input attributes. Find number. Oh, look at that. There's all the inputs, or all the attributes for all inputs. So there's a couple. Autofocus. Worth looking at. And some of these don't have key value pairs. Some of them are just settings. You're like, I want this one to autofocus when the page loads. You give it the autofocus attribute. And the user will just see that little blue box appear around the input as soon as they visit the page. Okay, other than number, do we know of any other ones that pre-built for us?
A question, that's, that it can count, steps. Can you actually remove that?
Remove steps?
Well, I mean, yeah.
Possibly. There's probably some sort of HTML or CSS attribute we could use to delete that little step counter. Those are usually pretty pseudo-type CSS selectors that let you do that. But yeah, usually anything is customizable if you look long enough. Okay, so another input we can look at. Type checkbox. And we get this little checkbox. Fancy. So checkbox, we usually see this as like a multiple choice situation, right? You can check multiple of them if needed. What is the other type of box like this where maybe the question is like, what's your gender? And you can only choose one or the other. Does anyone know what type of input that is? Radio. The radio is a little circle. And by default, these two are not related. So we can fill in both. But this is a good time to revisit the name attribute because that becomes even more important with these input types. So we'd give our form, my form, give it a name so we can select it. And just like text inputs, we just give these names to select them as well. So this is my num input. This is my checkbox input, radio input, and radio input. Okay, so something's already happened that we didn't see, but radios in particular, when we give them the same name, we can only select one or the other. That's how they're built to work. So now, if I click one and then click the other, since they share the same name, we can only select one. So again, name being very important for radios. Let's look at another input or two, and then we'll go to JavaScript to show you how to get the values from all these different types of inputs. It's very much the same as the text. So other types, we've got input, type, date. And immediately we get this nice little calendar. Yeah, so these web components built into the browser, so the browser will react to what the input type is. So we're seeing Chrome's default calendar. The user just gets that immediately. So you know, they choose a date and it formats it for you. You can also step in here, a whole bunch of attributes you can add to it. How about input type color? Get this nice little color palette. It will pop up a Chrome color palette for them to choose. And the value of this input would be an RGB value you could then use to change the color of the site off of what they maybe gave you. So it's very nice. Type color, running out of ones I have memorized, but there's one other type that, this is the only input type that does not use the input tag. It is a select option dropdown. So to build one of these, you need a surrounding select tag, and then you fill it full of options. So first option, second, third. And then you see with this kind of standard select option that we get on websites. So let's give all these names so we can work with them and see what's going on. Now the name for the select options, we're going to give the name just to the select tag. Okay, so let's grab the values from these number checkbox radio first. Let's add a button to this form. Submit all the things. It's a very random form. We're going to make it work. We have our script tag, perfect. And our form name is my form, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that. And then I'll add the event to it, so it's listening for someone to click that button. So I'll say myform.addEventListener. Give it a submit event, and what to do when the user clicks that button. Passing an E, or which stands for event. Then, just to make sure this doesn't happen when we click, oh, do I not have a button? Oh, it's right here, it's just a big button. So yeah, we see it refreshing. So we want to stop that first and foremost. Event.prevent default. And now let's start grabbing input values. So first, the number input. This is my form dot, whatever the name of this is, num input. And how do I get the value from this? Just like a text input? Yeah, so numbers are the same, dot value. So let's say var num value equals this. And then we're going to console log two things. We're going to first console log the num value. Then we're also going to console log the type of num value. You may have, has anyone seen type of before? Cool, this is a pre-built JavaScript operator. You say type of, and then you put space and then a variable, and it will return the type of that in this form of a string. So the string number or the string, letting you know what data type it is. And I'm doing this to see when we capture a number from a form, does it stay a number or does it turn into a string? Does anyone want to make a guess? It turns it into a string. So what would happen if I console logged num value plus num value? Yeah, will we get 15 or will we get 30 or will we get 15, 15? Yeah, 15, 15, because strings don't get added together, they get concatenated together. They're just putting two strings side by side. So how, knowing that this value is captured and turned into a string, okay, we now understand why our math doesn't work. How do I convert a string to a number in JavaScript? There are two ways, and that is an excellent one. So the first one is a numerical math operator called parse integer, or parse int for short. And this will search this variable for a number and return, or search it for a string representation of a number and return the number. Another one that you can do is capital N number. So either of these methods will work, number or parse int, to actually turn these into numbers before adding them together.
So one thing is that parse int will only so if you have like a floating, I mean the string is
like 4.012, yeah. Yeah, parse int will always round it for you. Number will keep floating points. So that's good to know. What's that? It returns not a number. So you got to give the pure string form of a number. So you have to give it something like 15. You can't say 15 is the number. Number won't work with that. Parse int will. Parse int will find the 15 usually. But number just needs, give me a string version of a number. I will turn it into a number. So now when I say we want to console log, instead of getting 15, 15, we get 30. And you probably, if you haven't finished it yet, you will run into this problem with the calculator assignment. So if you have and you figure it out, great. If you haven't, here's why. Okay, there's the number input. Pretty straightforward, right? Still just dot value off of the num input's name. Maybe not that straightforward, but a little bit. The next input we have is a checkbox, and with the name of checkbox input. I'm going to console.log myForm.checkboxInput.value. I'm going to check this checkbox. Hit submit, and I get on. Not a number because I didn't enter a number, but this still got submitted in console log, the numbers. I'm just going to comment that out for a minute. Yeah, if I don't submit, if I don't click anything, I get on. I click it, I get on. I click it off, now I still get on. So something's wrong. Value. This is the only input that doesn't have a dot value. It has a dot check. And what are the two possible values a checkbox can have? On or off, if we're thinking JavaScript data type, Boolean, true or false. So now, without it checked, submit all the things, false. With it checked, true. So just keep that in mind, checkbox, not dot value, it's dot checked. So checkbox input does not have a dot value, it has a dot checked, true or false. Okay, next one, radio input. Ooh, this is interesting. What does this have? This has a dot value, I'll give you that. It doesn't have a dot checked, it does have a dot value. But can the user give me a value? Like I can with an input, a text or a number input. No, there's nowhere to type, they choose one or the other. So for radios, you have to hard code what the radio represents. Let's say these radios were for gender, we'll do male, female. So I'd give this one a value of male, this one a value of female, and I have to tell it what it represents because the user's going to click on it. You know, I'd probably let the user know as well, this is for male, this is for female, so they know which radios for what. This is getting too big. There we go. So like, okay, I gotcha. And now with the value hard-coded, we can grab it just like we do with the other inputs. Must have hard-coded values in the HTML. Let's console.log my form dot, what was it, radio input probably? Yeah, radio input dot value. Click male, hit submit, get male, female, female. And that will only work if we've hard-coded it. Without it, it's just an empty string. They don't have values. Any question on radios? Okay, date and color. This is just dot value. These are text and number inputs. So we'll write it really quick, but it's the exact same syntax as we see here. Color and date inputs. So we're going to console.log my forum dot date input dot value. And we're going to console log my forum dot what did I call it? Color input. Of course I did. Comment these out so they are not in the way. Let's pick a date and a color. Blueberry, interesting. And then submit. There's my date. There's my hex blueberry color. Straightforward-ish? Yeah. Lastly, we have the select input dropdown. Okay, so we put the name on the select tag, and just like the radios, each option has to have a hard-coded value to let you know what is the what does this option represent. So maybe this is like a destination select dropdown. We've got Paris, and we'll put that as the hard-coded value. Amsterdam, put that as a hard-coded value. New York. Now with these hard-coded values, we can grab it with the same syntax. I can say myForm.selectInput.value, and it will represent whichever option the user has currently been selected on. So let's go to the app.js and console log that. Must have hard-coded values in the HTML. And we'll console log myForm.selectInput.value. I'll say Paris, Amsterdam, or New York, Amsterdam. Okay. So that is these inputs right here will pretty much be all you use. There are other ones, beware, there are ones like there's a slider, the range, where you can slide a bar left and right, kind of like the number input, but you get a kind of bar you can drag left and right. So there's a few others. These are the most common you see. And as long as you're remembering name attributes and that a couple of them need hard-coded values, you'll be good. Make sure there's nothing else on this. Yeah, there's email ones that will format your email for you. There's telephone or TEL for telephone. I'm gonna put the write-up here in Slack. Yeah, is there any questions on Forms Part 2? We're looking at here? Yeah.
Email input boxes.
Yeah.
Does it check them for validity, validity of syntax?
Yeah, some of these, if I put this as a type email, and let's say I just type random text and hit submit, Chrome will stop me. A lot of these inputs have pre-built validation. I gotta make this small to see it maybe. Yeah, please include the @ symbol. It knows this isn't a valid email address. So just by using the right type, you get that effect. You can also say, you know, a certain one is required. You just say the word required. And now that if the user hits submit without putting that in, Chrome will stop them. You know, please fill out this field. So there's some really simple validation we can do on the front end with these pre-built attributes, as long as we're using the right type and know about these other ones that enforce certain rules. Okay. It's Chrome that's doing it. Yep. We could write this in a notepad HTML doc. As soon as it's loaded in the browser takes control, figures out, you know, how to handle it. So if you're in Mozilla and use these inputs, they might look a little differently, but they're going to function the same. So it's browser specific. Okay, so for some practice on this, we're going to have you make a travel form. And this is just going to get you working with all the input types. So you just started your own airline. You need to create a form to collect data about your passengers' upcoming travel plans so they can book their flight. You should collect the following information from the user: first name, last name, age, gender, location they're traveling to, and whether they have any dietary restrictions. The inputs you'll use: text inputs, number input, a radio button with 2 or more options, a select box with at least 3 options, and check boxes for their dietary restrictions. Remember, each element should be given a name attribute so you can access that data in JavaScript easily. And make sure you include a submit button. When they hit submit, use the alert function and make their data show up like this in the window. Once you get this to show up, you're done with travel form. So I will stop the